We still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Just a question of taste with you, well, if you've gone sour, you want the world plus everything, but it won't work an hour. And now your questions are kept creeping, and you go and buy our flowers. You throw away the dreams we had, boy. I won't allow it. I said we're gonna fall out. Let's see you get out. I think we're gonna fall out. So shut your mouth.
I thought we'd better have some shorter music because we've got a few questions lining up. So there we go. We'll put the professionals tune on, which is Mitch's other tune. Good evening, Mitch. How are you?
I'm good, mate.
Good.
Back
good.
to the old days, live uncut and acoustic.
Aye, 5 years on since me and you started this whole process, and here we are, still doing 7 shows a week. Quite incredible, but here we are. And I thought a Q&A with you, because there's a few people asked for it over the last couple of weeks. Could we do one? Could we do one? So I've done a Q&A with most people, to be fair. I've done one with Steve Hasty, pre-record, one with George. Nice for me just to ask the questions. I'm doing one with Melly. Live next week with Ben Jacobson, live next week with Keith Patterson, and of course live with you tonight. So Paul Palpatine got in quickly with a question, which he sent to you. He said, "Hi Mitch, looking forward to your Q&A. Early question for you. All the hype about making a move for Trafford today has me thinking that a striker and a backup for Isak is not a priority. Do you think that is the reason that Eddie is keeping Wilson along with Asula? Thanks for your time."
It's difficult to call. It's strange the way we've sort of Newcastle United this bloody transfer window again already in some respects, but it's early days. I didn't expect us to do much, if anything, in this first weird little convenient window that they've opened up for the clubs that are off to the World Club Championship. It was always come across as a bit of a bloody nonsense anyway. And once again, we're sort of left, like many other things, talking about stuff that's happening off the pitch rather than discussing what's been happening on it. I think because particularly, I think there's something like 72 million worth of losses disappear at the end of June. I think we'd obviously be wanting to work on stuff now, but I don't think it's going to happen until the main window opens again once we're into July. So the way we seem to do business is better at the moment in terms of, it's not that long ago, the place used to leak like a sieve. And it doesn't leak the same way now, when things don't get out the way that they used to. I mean, there used to literally be agents sat in the reception at St James's Park broadcasting the world who they were there to see and on whose behalf. I mean, it's ridiculous, really. So that doesn't happen anymore. We seem to have a better and tighter process for going about our business. So I'm not panicking yet, and I'm not reading any assumptions into anything that is out. I think nothing's off the table and everything remains on the table.
I'll ask this question from Denise because it's relevant to the question we've just been asked. Do you think Trafford is there? It's an easy early deal and take longer for the forward and winger moves?
I don't think we'll have any easy deals. I think it's been made very clear to us. And if the club haven't got the message by now, I hope they're bloody listening to this. There are no friends in football. Nobody is here to help you. Nobody is willing to help you. There may be convenient alliances, and there may be people who happen to be doing something which you could piggyback on the back of. But there ain't no friends in football, and we certainly seem to be subject to question marks, extra hurdles and extra complicated amounts of money in transfer dealings by other clubs because of who our owners are, whether PSR exists or not. And so, for me, I'd just love to see we get the gloves off and play a little bit hardball. But that will mean some of those deals might be harder to do, because I don't want our trousers pulled down, and equally, I don't want to see us selling anybody for a pittance. And I don't think any of that's easy to do.
Okay, Tom Dixon asks, Murphy has been excellent this season, Mitch. He says, but I still think that I would play Barnes and Gordon and let them swap wings now and again. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's why there's another winger in the talk about what we need going forward. I think it's quite obvious. We need something to throw into the mix which is different, which offers something different, who could break down a difficult or recalcitrant defence. We need somebody who can unpick a lock. We need somebody who can introduce from the bench and make a change, because that's patently what was missing even in the last game of the season. We had nobody who was able to come off that bench and be a difference maker. And I think Murphy works hard. He's workmanlike. That hard work has paid off this season. Is he the long-term solution? I do not think so. Are Gordon and Barnes swapping and changing the part of the long-term solution? I don't think so either, because I think both of them are happy on the left, and neither of them seem happier or as effective on the right. And so that's why I think another winger's in the talks, or in the mix, when it comes to talking about who's coming in.
Okay, Craig, good evening. He says, question for Mitch. Does he think that there's a reason why we haven't seen more sponsorship coming into the club for training kits, obviously the ground, etc.?
As you can probably tell, it's one that's frustrated me and Stu, and we talk about it quite a lot. When we talk about it on the professionals with you, they're conversations we have away from here. Well, we have some of them on WhatsApp groups that we're on. And
yeah.
You see that, Steve, as well. Everybody out there doesn't have access to that, obviously, but it's something that we scratch our heads on. The one thing we keep coming back to is some of the businesses who may want to be introduced to the sponsorship mix by association or affiliation with PIF will want to sponsor a shiny new ground, but not necessarily sponsor a ground on the way out. They'll want to be seen to have their name attached to the big shiny new thing, not the thing that's going to be consigned to history. Training ground the same. We know that that's going to be replaced long term. Training kit, however, that's one I see as low hanging fruit. There must be somebody somewhere who must be prepared to put a deal together that will ease incomings in the sponsorship side of things. If you look at some of the odd deals that have been done on training and front of kit sponsorships, even recently, Chelsea's short-term deal with Damac, which patently was to take into the account of Club World Cup, but also to help Damac sell these horrible new apartments that they're building down in Dubai Creekway. Let's just say Chelsea aren't associating their name with a company that reeks of quality out here in Dubai. I've got to say that. I think I can say that. I don't think Stu would get away with saying that, given that it's his industry, and he's probably treading on toes saying things like that. But I'm free to say stuff like that. I wouldn't thank you for a Damac apartment necessarily, and I've been in some, and build quality is variable, I think is the polite word. And apparently they're talking about having these apartments flash blue lights every time Chelsea score a goal, which would I'd like to see how long that lasts with the occupants of the apartments once they move in. I think they'll be bloody hell on. But it's a very typical tacky Dubai thing to do, unfortunately. But yeah, there are some things that I think Stu and I perceive as low-hanging fruit that I'm baffled that haven't just been even short-term deals. And yes, we seem to be subject to different fair value amounts than everybody else seems to be. And yes, some of that is a pain in the arse to deal with. But surely it's worth dealing with if it's going to ease PSR issues. Thank you for your comments, mate.
Yeah, some nice comments coming in there. Lee says, question for both. How long do you think PIF will remain our owners? Well, I would say quite a long time.
Yeah. I don't buy into the scaremongering that pops up every now and again, which appears every time it's done to be wishful thinking on the part of client journalists attached to other clubs in the Premiership. That PIF are getting frustrated enough to sell up. No, I don't see it. Yeah. It would be very embarrassing for Yasser Al-Rumayyan to have made some of the very public statements he's made and then to walk away. That would be... People don't understand how big a celebrity in Saudi our chairman is, I don't think. When we were over there for the game against Al Hilal in the training session they did in Saudi a little while ago, Stu and I, obviously through some of his contacts, were in the VVIP area. And the only thing I could enlighten it to would be if a rock star walked in the room when the chairman arrived. People flocked to watch him come in. People were chit-chatting. The chatter stopped. And everybody turned to look at who'd come in. And kids were running over to get a glance at him. And it was... That's how big he is held in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. For him to have made the public statements on television programmes that he has made, and then for PIF to walk away, would be humiliating.
Okay, and another question that followed from Lee was, do you think we can qualify for the next Club World Cup? I mean, I guess it depends if that's...
As it seems to be such the most random way of qualifying, God only knows. I think if we're stood in the right position and the wind blows in the right direction, we're having to wear the right colour socks on a Wednesday, and then maybe, possibly, we might get an invite. I've got no idea how we qualify.
Yeah, it's a strange scenario, this, and it just depends what makes the most money, and if it doesn't make money, they'll move on to something else, I guess. Bill?
I see they're bothered about tickets already.
Well, there you go. That's a big thing. As soon as
they've only sold 25,000 tickets for the opening game.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
And they're shitting themselves.
Yeah. Phil says, apart from family, people, and football, what do you miss most about the Northeast that you can't get in Dubai?
Well, as one of my next door neighbours when I lived in North Shields used to be Pippa Gregg. I would love to sit her down and have another conversation about her opening shops in the Middle East. They have no idea how well it would sell out here, because that kind of baked good out here is popular with so many different nationalities and groups of nationalities out here. Yes, they would have to come up with a halal version as well as, but they could also sell normal versions too. Dubai's very, very open to that. With the right licenses, it's not that big an issue. Having that easy access, although you can buy the bake-at-home stuff in two of the big supermarkets here now. So I can trot over the road to a little shop called Grandiose and get the sausage rolls in the freezer department and bake them myself in my air fryer. That's always quite a treat. But it isn't the same as buying it out the shop and getting it yourself. It'll be the first thing I do when I get off the plane at the end of the month. I can promise you that. It's little things like that. But you can get most things here if you look hard enough. It just sometimes comes at a premium. So, for example, can of iron brew runs at a couple of quid, but you can get it, and it's not hard to get. Dubai's changed a lot since I've been out here. It's opened up. It's relaxed even further. It was always relaxed compared to many other countries in the Middle East, but really, Dubai as an emirate has changed quite a lot, and the UAE as a country has changed quite a lot in my time here, and is much more relaxed about a lot of things. I think it's at the point now where I would dare suggest Dubai Mall is probably more Christmassy than Eldon Square at Christmas. You could come here as a tourist and not necessarily realise it's Ramadan during Ramadan anymore. Whereas I remember locking myself in my surgery with my lunch in case anybody walked in by accident and things like that. I can remember all things being very different when I first came out here. So in terms of missing things, it's harder and harder to miss things as technology's opened up as well. Things like this, being able to do this, being able to talk to your family and friends very easily. Even though Dubai still is a bit weird about some blocking certain things and certain devices and certain apps, but that's all financial based because what they want you to do is to buy the Dubai version and use that instead and pay a monthly subscription rather. So yeah, there's and as we're creeping into the summer, it'll be nice to get out of the heat for a little bit soon because it is getting silly now.
Okay, Phil also asked, what is your favourite version of St James's Park in all your time as a supporter? Good question, though.
That's a really good question. The one I'll always have the fondest memory of is the very first one I walked into, which would be where the East Stand was the new stand. The Milburn stand was still the old wooden stand, and the Gallagher and Leazes, the Gallagher was as was, and the Leazes had just had the roof that had taken off, and the new roof that never got built had just been started. So I'll always have a soft spot for that version of St James's Park. But then it's hard to beat how it is now, because it's so unique, and it's something that makes so many people who come to the city talk about it. And because of the way it's developed, yes, it's lopsided, it's quirky, but it towers over the city and makes a statement. And I think it's that statement and that presence that people are frightened to lose with a move to a new ground. We want to have that presence still. The fact that you can see it when you're coming over the bridge on the train, the fact that you can see it from the Gateshead side of the water, you're home, and it's more than a landmark and more than a football ground. It's essentially the heartbeat of the city. And so it's difficult not to love the current version very, very much indeed.
Yeah, 83, 84 was my first season, and I'm in complete agreement with you with that as well. Lots of people saying the old Leazes End, 60s in the Leazes End. Some people saying the 70s. Does the old smell of the Gallagher bog still catch your breath when you see the old photos? It definitely does. Coppers hat flying down the Leazes.
Show me a photo you can smell.
St James's Park is beautiful, sacrilege to move. Lots of questions coming in, so I must stick with them. Mark says, ask Mitch. Mitch once said on the Amigos, everything is a dildo. If you're brave enough. The experience.
I wouldn't like to say, Mark.
He's a cheeky bugger. Gary, Mitch, as a young lad, what made you decide to go into dentistry, and how did you end up abroad practicing? Now, I know I had this probably a few years back, but refresh people's memories, Mitch.
I mean, the driving, I was lucky enough in that I could have done anything I wanted. Pretty much with the the A-levels I did and the results I had, there was a certain pressure from some areas at school, certainly, to look at medicine instead of dentistry. Never really had that same pull. But equally, it's a question I've always struggled to answer, and I totally refuse to deliver the kind of trite answers I've heard from other people. Oh, well, I'm good with my hands and I like to help people, bollocks. That was never a drive for it. But it was something I was pretty fascinated with from a relatively young age, and remained something to drive towards. Particularly when it was patently clear I was never going to be Newcastle United's left fullback. Coming abroad was a family adventure. In part, seeing the writing on the wall with the NHS contract and seeing what has happened to that is pretty much what we predicted. We had 3 practices as a family. And the NHS one in Blythe probably generated 30% of our business income, but took about 70% of our effort to keep it going because of the way the system worked, and then a fallout locally with the NHS over contracts for the new small practice we opened in Cromlin, soured our taste with dealing with them anymore. And we took a decision as a family that we wanted a new challenge and a new adventure. And the initial idea was to come out. I had a discussion with Emirates, because they have a medical and dental facility for their senior staff. But while I was out, I got poached by somebody else. I was over for an interview, and somebody somewhere handed the CVs over to another group. They asked me along for a chat while I was over, and instead of going to Emirates, I went somewhere else instead.
There you go. Next question is from George, your dad. Neil, when you were playing for the Argots and coach suggested you went to Canada for a tryout, do you ever wish you had?
Yes, it's probably my one sliding doors moment where I wonder what if. So when I stopped playing football, I got very heavily into American football, played in the junior league in the northeast for Newcastle Argonauts, and they were affiliated to Gateshead Senators, who I played a few games for as well. And John, who was our coach at the Argonauts, was tied to the Toronto Argonauts in the Canadian Football League, and he picked a few out to suggest that they'd had people over from Canada and they liked the look of it, and would go to Canada and think about doing a tryout for the Argonauts. And I literally was 6 months into my dental course, I think, at that time. And one of the barriers was there was no easy way to transfer. And the dental school were basically, right, if you leave now, there's no guarantee we'll have you back in. And if you do, you've got to start all over again. And it just seemed the wrong place at the wrong time when I'd just started down the dental pathway. I think if it had been a year earlier, I might have taken a chance. But at that time, it just didn't seem. And it's the one thing. Having had discussions with John subsequently, after I stopped playing for the Argonauts, went to Senators, and I was playing for Newcastle University's team, and I was playing, funny enough, against John Melrose when he was at university down in East Anglia. Little did I know I'd played against him quite a few times. And then when he come back to the northeast, we both ended up at the Senators for a short period of time. There was a combined British Universities team that I got tried out for as well, and it was always kind of in and around. But yeah, that was probably the one thing I think. Yeah, maybe I should have given it a go.
Mark comes in with a sensible question. I know it's a rare event. Mitch, as an expat, if you could move one thing from home, Newcastle, to Dubai, what would it be?
Ooh. A Greg shop.
That's a theme, isn't it? There is a theme.
There is, isn't
Denise has a question. Mitch, if you could have played professional football, what would have been your position, skill-wise and preference-wise?
Left back. Because of the way my dad was taught to play football, he drilled a lot of those things into me. And so I'm a right-footed left back who can use both feet and still can. I got more opportunity at left back. There was more people after right full back. But in terms of the pecking order, to give you an idea, there's somebody called Steve Watson was 2 years behind me at Burnside and played in our year's team. And so I was pretty far down the pecking order on the right-hand side. But on the left-hand side, the lad who was ahead of me, Belly, who was at Wallsend Boys, he ended up going to Port Vale, I think, and was at Port Vale for a long time. And so it was an interesting cohort to be part of. Wouldn't swap for the world, though. Had some great times.
Captain Keith Hart says, "Hi Neil, just wanted to ask if you ever miss Skunkers in its heyday, because I do. Can you just tell people what Skunkers was?
Absolutely. Well, the early days of the internet, when I had message boards, everybody's seen, because it's still going, because Sunderland's still stuck then, in that time, seen ready to go, the Sunderland message board, where some of the opinions are just unreal. That's never changed from the day. And we created a message board that was a breakaway from one of the Talk of the Tyne or Talk of the Toon ones. And we christened it Skunk as just because the Mackhams always used to call us skunks, and we thought, right, we'll just use the name instead. So it was Skunkers, and it was a funny mix of Mags and Mackhams, but you'll see quite a few were still on Twitter, and you'll see me bantering with quite a few people on Twitter still who are all ex-Skunkers. And it was vicious, it was wild. People would come bouncing on, "Hi, I'm new to this message board," to be greeted with "die in a house fire." And it's sort of really heavy-duty insults, fuck off. And it was unruly, it was mental, it was bonkers, it was hilarious, it was typical Northeast humour with your mates. Some of the red and whiters that used to get on there were canny crack at the best of times, but when you hear me referring to, there are certain little phrases and things that I trot out every now and again which come straight from the annals of Skunkers history. I wouldn't change for the world, because whenever I say it to people, I've been called worse by better people, most of it was on Skunkers.
What happened to it, Mitch? Did it just die a death?
Died a death, petered out with things like Twitter and different types of social media. That's why it still amazes me that Ready to Go is still going with the Mackhams. There was a little revival of it a couple of years ago, and I don't know whether they're talking about doing it again. But it's such a different world in terms of social media and how the internet's used now. Mm-hmm. But that was we did all sorts. I remember once during one of the World Cups, we decided to mass invade an American gun forum and trying to get them talking about what formation that Glenn Hoddle should be playing and things like that, and getting wildly abused by people in Alabama. And just it was the original home for me of internet mischief, and you've got some great stuff out of it. I think I was on Skunkers. One of the things, there was somebody who was talking about Wikipedia edits during one of the shows the other day, and I remember an early Wikipedia edit I did of Kenman Jones, and it was up there for about 3 months. That after he finished playing football, he opened a series of beachfront timepiece concessions, and it was up there for months and months, and that was all born out of Skunkers and mischief that people had suggested on Skunkers. It was a proper, it was chaos. It was beautiful chaos, though, at times. Beautiful chaos. If you wanted to know what my username was, there it was Tamuri's Chrome Dome.
But there we go. Colin Watson. I know Colin Watson. Is it the same one?
No, Colin. Yeah. That's an inside Skunkers joke.
All right. Could we sell the stack to be an associated company, says George. I know George has got a couple of other questions there, but God, anything we do will be...
For me, absolutely anything is still on the table because they've got no ability to close the loopholes because the clubs don't allow it. And I have to seriously ask again, our club, because if you're watching, if you're listening, why aren't your gloves off? Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely just do it, because they're obviously not prepared to close it now. And so we've given them the chance. They've had the chance to close it, and people have decided it's fine. So let's just do it. Let's sell, when we move, let's keep St James's Park on the lease, put the ladies in there, and let's sell that as a package to a parent company.
Mm-hmm.
Let's sell the stack off to ourselves. Why the hell not? Because if it's good for Chelsea, it's good for us, surely.
Okay, halfway through the show, a quick ad break, back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickys.co.uk. Email info@mrvickys.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. I'm laughing because people are just sending in the fact that Newcastle are asking for hairstyle of the season. Dear me, how it's definitely a quiet news week. Question for Mitch from Sam: electric toothbrush or not?
Yes, electric. All the data says electric is better than manual, no matter which type of electric you use. Just make sure you get the hygienist to show you how to use it properly.
Oh, is that because you brush too hard with a toothbrush?
Can do. Also, it takes away certain small sort of hand-eye coordination things out of the equation that effectively some people have got 10 thumbs and no matter how hard they try, they can't do it properly. Whereas if you're using an electric brush, it takes certain that sort of those motor functions or lack of motor function away from it and makes you more efficient.
All right. Okay. Stephen says, Mitch, if you could put a friendly arm around any of our players and give constructive advice, which player would you pick and what advice would you give them?
It's an interesting one. Gordon. Believe in yourself and don't try too hard. Because I think there's times he tries too hard. And that when he starts trying too hard, that's when it doesn't work for him. That's when it... And I think that comes from a desperation to prove himself. He's got nothing to prove. We know he's a world-class player. He just has to relax and be a world-class player.
Okay, Michael says, question for Mitch. If stranded on a desert island and you were granted 3 items to pass away the time, what would they be? It can be anything, but not 3 bottles of alcohol.
Not 3 bottles of alcohol. If you've got access to unlimited internet through a phone or an iPad, you've got access to anything you want. You can work out how to make as much bloody alcohol as you want with whatever you've got on the island. So that's an interesting one. But that would be one thing if possible. I couldn't just bring a book. I would want lots of books, and that's another way to get access to lots of books. It's one thing I don't think I do enough of at the minute. Read. I don't have much time for it at the minute. Just agreed a new project to get going over the summer, so I've got plenty to keep us busy. What else would I want? I might have to come back to that. I might have to put that in the back of my head and have a little think on that. That's not as straightforward as you think.
Following on the dentist theme, Marcus says, do you recommend using a tongue scraper?
If you need to use one, yeah. It certainly doesn't hurt, but you can brush your tongue as well.
All right. Can you see Eddie Howe letting Tino Livramento go to Manchester City, says Peter?
This ties into a conversation you and I had a couple of days ago, Steve, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
My view on Tino is this. He's a great player. He has a potential to be our right back for the foreseeable. But you're not going to win or lose a title on the back of a right back. Aston Villa traded for 3 years on the back of getting 100 million for Grealish. If they're prepared to chuck absolutely stupid money at Tino, I know this mightn't be a popular thing to say, but he's replaceable. It's not Isaac. It's not Tonali. It's not Bruno. There are. He's a right fullback, and that is a position that there does seem to be an abundance of people that you get. So if you can take their eyes out financially, if they're that desperate for him, not only do we then ease the pressure of PSR and stop people worrying that the crown jewels are going to be sold, but we have money to play with in the transfer market that could be an unexpected windfall. So I think anybody concerned that, oh my God, they're listening to offers, there might be, because it might be silly, it might be stupid, and if it's stupid money, I think it has to be considered. I think it doesn't send the right kind of message though about building the squad for the future and building, but equally, I could understand why they might entertain an offer if it's crazy money.
Okay, Tim says, Mitch, I asked your dad the same question. What and where has been your most memorable meal?
It's a good question. It is a really good question. I enjoyed an exceptional meal in the Japanese restaurant in the Burj Khalifa alongside Mr. Penman not so long ago with our mutual friend Mr. Mohammed. That was sensational, I think is the word I would pick. And with some sensational bottles of wine that he cracked open as well. Put it this way, I'm glad I didn't foot the bill for that. But I think the one that still sticks most in my memory was a meal I had in the Maldives, literally on the top of a sandbank in the middle of the Indian Ocean, the stuff being brought from the restaurant by boat. Yeah, that was a phenomenal evening with ridiculously large bats flying overhead from island to island and the sea literally lapping around the edge of the table. And the food was spectacular, and it was a wonderful evening.
B. Taylor says, Mitch, do you think shopping for players from the leagues abroad would mean less Saudi tax being applied?
Yes, I think shopping from leagues abroad you'd probably find clubs are more willing to do deals and deal with it. It's like I come back to saying there's no friends in football. Nobody in the Premier League wants to be seen as the club that helped us. And therefore, by default, that's why we've got silly situations like we did with Guai and Palace. That was Parish being a dick. Because we made them an offer that they'll never get again for that player. Even if we're talking to them again now, I bet it's not for the same levels of money. And that's on them. That's on them. And so I think, for me, yes, I think going abroad opens doors in many different ways that shopping with Premier League clubs doesn't. However, that does seem to jar with when Eddie says he would rather have players with Premier League experience coming in there, and understand that too.
Daniel says, what do you think is the real reason we don't utilise loopholes? Surely we can't be punished more than others for the same thing, and is the doing it the right way such a big thing for PIF?
But we can. Because they've shown they're inconsistent in how they apply their rules and how they apply their punishments. They've shown there's no real pattern. And I'm telling you right now, if they wanted to pull us up for something, they would want to apply the maximum punishments they damn well could, and they would go all out for that, and they would push for that. That's genuinely how I feel. I do think we're getting near the point where I just want them to take the gloves off though and say, sod this. Wake up. We're going to be the bad guy one way or the other. And I get that they want to do things right, and I get that they want to do things through the front door with their chest puffed out and their head held high and say we did this in spite of. But there's got to come a time where it just becomes nonsense, and it's very close to that for me.
Okay, Neil's sunning it up in Turkey. Enjoy yourself, Neil. He says, have you heard anything regarding the stadium capacity? Apparently, Luke Edwards says it's this month now.
I've heard something. Don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it. I'd heard a suggestion that the reason things went quiet was there's a split in opinion about what the capacity of the new ground should be. And for me, it would suggest that somebody in Saudi wants bigger, better. We'll see.
Okay. Tom says, Mitch, do we expect Dubravka and Vlachomidos to leave in this window? I guess if Trafford comes in, is somebody going to leave?
Gobsmacked if they don't. I feel terribly for how Dubravka seems to have been treated. He had a move lined up, he had money lined up, and then was persuaded to sign a deal, and then I don't think he's kicked the ball forward since. Must have been
a Brown or an agreement there. There's been an agreement with him.
That's the only thing I can think of, Steve, is that there's been an agreement made. Although if that was the case, he should have told his bloody wife before she went mental on Instagram about it.
Yeah, I get the feeling that they didn't want to be in the same position as they were for the cup final, and it was done. I mean, yeah, Dubravka was great before Pope came back in. But how's proved to be right on this?
again, how stupid this is with that money. With the Greek lad, I'll not embarrass myself by butchering his name. He, remember, is still our most expensive goalkeeper ever.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a crying shame for that lad's career if he's held back any further.
Yeah.
However, how we get them out and how the money balances from a PSR perspective, I've got no idea.
Paul says, how long does Mitch see himself living and working in Dubai for?
Pretty much made me mind up that this is my last job as a dentist out here.
Okay.
I've given up my UK registration now. I will never work in the UK again. That I've pretty much made my mind up. If I was to work in the UK, it wouldn't be as a dentist. This is home for now. I would be lying if I didn't say I haven't got half an eye on future destinations and future options. And that some of that I even have a little discussion with my dad about when I'm back at the end of the month. But my opinion on some of that may be changed one way or the other for personal reasons, shall we say. But let's see.
Okay. Does Mitch think Andorra played against England like Rafa's Newcastle United? Or were England just bad?
I think bad, demotivated, tired. All of those things. Challenge going anywhere like that is somebody like England. We're seen as a scalp. Everybody will play up. What's the mission critical thing out of a game like that? Do not drop points. Okay, tick. 3 points. You get 3 points for 1-0, you get the same as for 4-0. Yes, okay, people go on about goal difference and stuff like that, but that over in a group stage tends to sort itself out. You've just got to get the 3 points and then bang, see what happens. And it again raises the questions when we're open the show, we're talking about the FIFA Club World Cup. Who in football is thinking about the pastoral care of players and burnout when they're doing stuff like that all the time? When the international tournaments, when friendlies have become this ridiculous Nations League, which then, for those teams who've been in the finals of that recently, have added another layer of competitive football back. You know, and those players need a bloody rest. They're not machines. Was it Bruno played something like 3 years on the trot without a break?
Yeah.
And is it any wonder sometimes in the start of the season he looked absolutely dead on his feet? Because he's daft enough not to complain about it because he loves football. And it comes out, that's come out a little bit in some of the interviews he's done this year about his path to professional football and about how passionate he is and how he loves it and the sacrifices he's made in the past about it. And I think he just wants to cherish every physical second he can on a football pitch because he knows the career's short. But ultimately, that doesn't help us if he's knackered and looks like he's running in treacle after 3 games of the season. You know, and I think I look at the England squad. A lot of those players will just want a bloody rest, and I'm not surprised that they didn't do too well.
Yeah, come home and manage it, Greg, says Sam. What's the hottest temperature you've experienced in Dubai?
I went out to a hotel at a place called Jebel Dana, which is down at the bottom end of Abu Dhabi, close or well on the way to sort of Saudi and Qatar borders. And the sea was so hot, there was dead fish floating in it because they'd been cooked in the shallow water.
Dear me, how that's mental.
And I think, well, put it this way, when you went in the sea, I can promise you I've had colder baths. It was not a pleasant experience. And then every now and again, oh, dead football. Oh, dead football. Dead football. Dead fish.
Dead
There's
fish.
another dead fish. And it must have been touching mid-50s, maybe even 58-ish degrees.
Wow. Has Mitch ever played for any dentist footballing teams? He says, I played against a touring team a few decades ago.
Briefly, that turned out a couple of times for medicals when I was at dental school. And I think they played in, certainly one of the university intramural leagues.
Okay. Mitch, one Newcastle result you would change? Alan says he would change the 4-3 defeat against Liverpool.
The 1-0 home defeat against Man United when we're back at them and we should have won. And Schmeichel had a blinder and Cantona popped up with a 1-0. And I think if we'd won that game, we'd have probably won the title that season.
Okay. Tim says, who's Mitch's favourite comedian?
Ooh. At the minute, Tom Segura.
And who is Mitch's band, artist, or genre? Says Denise.
Depends what day of the week it is. I'm quite eclectic. I can go everything from Metallica through to Depeche Mode, 9 Inch Nails. My sort of selection of stuff on my phone is exceptionally variable. It genuinely does depend what kind of fettle I'm in.
Same as me. Favourite post-1990s tune strip?
I just retain a ridiculous soft spot for the barcode strip, you know. The thin and thick striped ones. I've got absolutely no idea because the football was shite when we wore it and it was a weird design. It was totally out of its time. But I still have a ridiculous soft spot for it.
Okay, let's get skunkers in the Viz or a skunker section in the 25-26 fanzine. The link is posted above for anybody who wants to subscribe for next season. £25 for 4 issues. All proceeds going to Age UK Dementia. John was on skunkers. He says, my name was Little Joe. And Mitch says, Mark, name a Newcastle player, one past and one present that you had or have a soft spot for that wasn't popular with the majority.
Okay. Past one. It wasn't popular with the majority. Nicky Papavasalou. Because I think there was a really good little player in there and he worked his ass off. And he was one of those players, he was chucked into a situation through injury where he was playing games that he wasn't really equipped to deal with. But he gave it a damn good go. Present. I still have a lot of time for Sean Longstaff. And I found Sandro Tonali's interview when he was asked to name an underrated player. It was the first name out of his mouth, 100 mile an hour. Didn't even have to think about it. I found that fascinating.
Okay, up the tune says, Mitch, do football clubs have their own dentistry?
Generally they have. Some of them have got a dentist appointed, but he isn't necessarily an official club dentist as such, or he carries that moniker, but his services aren't paid for. It's taken like a sponsorship. And he can be there to advise on things pitch side. Touches on the project that I'm working on. It's a sports dentistry project. We're going to be starting Dubai sports dentistry over the summer, hopefully, and bringing the #1 sports dentist in Europe to Dubai because he happens to be a good friend of mine. He's based in Athens and he looks after Olympiakos, Panathinaikos and Atromitos, amongst others. And we have some very interesting studies that we're planning and data that we've collected that show what we can do as a profession in terms of enhancing the well-being of an elite group athlete. Because there's now hard data that says if you take an elite group athlete and improve their oral health, their performance improves. So we now have data that says oral health is effectively a marker for performance, which is quite mind-blowing, really. But the analogy I always use is, if you make me a thousandth of a second quicker, I'll still miss the bus if I'm running for it. But if you make Usain Bolt a thousandth of a second quicker, he breaks world records. It's levels, isn't it?
Favourite boozer in the town in the 90s, Mitch? Dean was a DJ from 96, 2010 in the Big Market, the Boat, amongst other bars, Pick and Whistle, City Vaults. Great times, he says.
Trillions.
Farmers was mine, Terry. I've got to be honest, I loved going in there back in the day. Idols was great on a pre-match before the days of political correctness, says Mark. Would you move the Golden Chippy to Dubai, says Tim?
Oh, hey. You know what? That is something else that's difficult to get out here. Is a really good chippy. There's a couple try, but they kind of get the right potatoes out here.
JJ says, Mitch, the first time I met you outside JLT, Aston Villa game, you missed the first goal. You were waiting for a taxi to deliver some money. Was it all there?
Yes, it was.
Terry asks a more serious question. He says, do you think the Club World Cup will go ahead with what's happening in the States? Yeah, there's hell on in Los Angeles at the minute.
I think there's too much committed to it, and too much money committed to it now for it not to. I have to say there's things going on in the States that would make me, if I was an athlete from certain countries, I would be double checking what visa requirements actually are and making sure that all the paperwork's in place and making sure that my team, whoever is taking me there, is going to protect me and look after me when I step inside that country. It seems to be some quite worrying things happening there at the moment. FIFA, they've got the brass neck to run anything. I think they'd run a bloody tournament in Sicily while Mount Vesuvius was erupting and not give a damn. You know, they've got the brass neck to do what they like because it's all about the money at the end of the day. I think they're more worried about putting bums on seats. They'd probably stop the rides by giving free tickets out.
Last couple of questions. Do you feel Newcastle will win the Champions League in your lifetime, says Marcus?
If we go to a situation where the shackles are removed, I bet your bottom dollar our owners would pump anything anybody wanted in to win the top prize. If that changes, yes.
Favourite NUFC chant, past or present?
Oh, that one I was telling you about the lad who used to wear the dungarees, used to stand in the corner and do all the, if you're proud to be a Geordie, be a, and it would be like, be a tree, shh, and all of that. I used to love all that crap. That's fantastic. Too many things that are non-repeatable in terms of overheard banter, that's for bloody sure. But that's one of the things you miss out here. Although we've got such a good vibe going on with the Dubai Mags at the moment, there's always some good banter to be had in UBK.
Got two questions, says Andrew. Would you take Fabianski and flog Pope? And do you think Eddie Howe would walk away from the club if he couldn't buy anyone this summer?
Oh, no, about Fabianski. I think there's better available out there, particularly if we're going to have a big change in the goalkeeping room. Do I think he'd walk? I think if he felt that was going to be the case, he would have walked already. I think he's that kind of. I think he's in that kind of position where I think if he felt he was pissing in the wind, he would walk away. Yeah.
Okay, slightly different way of Eddie leaving. If we fail to qualify for Europe next season, do we replace Howe?
Managers' jobs are ever increasingly more at risk for fewer problems. I think they've shown with Mitchell, if they think something isn't working, they're quite prepared to pull the trigger. I think that's a salient warning to everybody involved in Newcastle United. But I think it would take more than that for them at the minute. Still think he's got a bit of credit in the bank. But it's a very interesting thing to ponder. I do think they're ruthless enough.
Yeah. Okay, try and get through a couple of quick fire ones. What's your favourite meal out in the UAE? Is there a favourite place you go to?
Right now, a Japanese barbecue place called Mogiya. They do phenomenal Wagyu beef, either hot pot or barbecue. And if you go on the right evening, it's all you can eat at a really good value, and the quality is superb. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's good to go with mates, or it's good you can take somebody on a date. They could do it all, but the quality is just excellent. It's superb, and if you like Asian barbecue, it's top notch.
Would you change the formation for next season? Yes or no?
I would have a range of players able to play multiple formations for different situations. So I guess that's a yes. I would like us to have a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D, and be comfortable to switch between them in game. Yeah.
Stephen, he says, Mitch, my front tooth's becoming loose from the old boxing days. Give us a good price and I'll fly out. I think that's where
there's always a bit of Geordie discount to be had at Park Avenue Dental. However, I do have to warn everybody, my brand new hygienist does happen to be a Macam, but I don't hold that against her.
Great stuff, Mitch. Great hour. I'm sure we'll do another one again. Maybe he's not leave it so long this time.
Anytime, mate. Anytime. Look, if you need a hand with the shoes, you know I'm always on hand. It's a delight to do it. It's a delight to get many kind words and so much feedback for everything that everybody associated with the channel does. It's all done with the right reason. And the thing that was set off intended to do, create something that people felt like they could join in, like it was a conversation with their mates at the pub, that they wanted to continue it afterwards. Well, I think we hit that sweet spot every time. And it's not bad for a pair of old gobshites that were still going strong.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Great stuff. I have pre-recorded one with George and with Steve Hasty. I'm about to pre-record one with Melly. A couple of live ones next week will be Keith Patterson, of course, who's coming back onto the channel for a show, and Ben Jacobs as requested. But we will be live with the Amigos on Saturday. I believe we're going to do it at 6 till 7:30, so an hour and a half of the Amigos on Saturday night. So I'll see you then, Mitch. Take care. Thanks for your time.
Cheers, everyone.